So today we're going to go see the Bikeriders and see how it is. It's based on a book called The Bikeriders, which is actually about photojournalism with the Outlaw Motorcycle Club in Chicago. So we're going to review this on today's Graybeard Biker. Opening night. Theaters aren't as popular as they once were, but there's a larger crowd, larger than what's normal nowadays, in the theater, as bikers and enthusiasts wait for the movie to start. Okay, I was looking forward to this movie since I heard about it last year. We haven't had a good biker movie in years, and there is nothing like seeing a bunch of motorcycles together, whether it's in person or on the screen. And every time you see the club riding on the screen and the rumble of the engines on the cinema sound system, it's amazing. So The Bikeriders is based on a photography book and interviews by Danny Lyons, who lived with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. It takes place from the early to mid 60s through to the early 70s. Jeff Nichols is both screenplay writer and the director of the film. And while the book itself doesn't provide a story, it's just photos and interviews, it does capture a slice of life, club life, during that time period. And so Nichols created a storyline based on his observations in the photos and in the interviews. He literally wove in the photography and the actual interviews into the film as he created it. Now, it's a raw and gritty portrayal of life within a motorcycle club, and it hits home with an authenticity that's rare in Hollywood. It's not an action movie. It's not a blockbuster hit either, but it is good. Now, Jeff Nichols, who is not a biker himself, dives deep into the culture, the camaraderie, and the chaos that define the biker lifestyle and the history of motorcycle clubs as well, through being respectful to Danny Lyons' book and, of course, the interview recordings. But the Bikeriders film experienced a few obstacles since Jeff announced the project. The movie was finished and screened at the 50th Telluride Film Festival in August 2023, with a theatrical release set for December 1st, 2023, under the 20th Century Film Studio label. But it was pulled by Disney, who owns 20th Century Fox, Searchlight, whatever it is they're calling it nowadays. During the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. Then, later, Disney dropped it altogether. The already completed film, The Bikeriders, was then sold off to Focus Features. Now, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here into our footage of my immediate reaction, my immediate thoughts after seeing the film, because it's relative to the Disney conversation. You know, the whole time that I'm watching it, I'm thinking about the whole Disney problem and why did Disney own this and then pass on it, right? Because that's a huge red flag that it may not be a good movie. But I think, I don't know if it was you that said it or somebody that said it, it doesn't fit the Disney agenda. There's no leftist stuff in it at all. Because I think the movie was actually pretty good.
It didn't fill the gay pie chart.
Yeah. Well, there was no lefty stuff in it at all, regardless of whether it's homosexuality or any of the other, snowflakes or anything else, safe spaces.
Disney got woke.
These are the tampons I usually use.
Thank you.
I prefer pads. They're more comfortable for me.
Thank you.
I always get the ones with wings.
Thank you.
Get unscented and bleach-free if you can.
Thank you.
Yo, my daughter loves these.
Thank you.
These might be easier if it's her first period.
These are really environmentally friendly.
Y'all, in this one scene, we're talking about periods. We got women's rights issues. It's environmentally friendly. We have a trans man. And then, of course, we have rights for non-humans because there's so many people that now identify as inanimate objects.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and
Okay, but
And I'm still here despite the fact that last night I witnessed someone get ritualistically murdered by my dad's cult that I just inherited.
oh, here we go.
What the? Slaves built this country, and we, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering and continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy that America was founded with and still is not atoned for. Slaves built this country, not only
all that like momentum that I felt, like that sense of I don't have to be afraid to like, let's have these two characters kiss, let's in the background this, like I was just wherever I could just basically adding queerness to like if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud of them. But like I just was like, no one would stop me and no one was trying to stop me.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
There you go.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
I want to ask you both because this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin. And are you excited about that? Are you bracing yourself?
Star Wars. Not the
How do you feel?
Am I gay? Yes.
Well, no, I know you are gay, but I'm asking, are you excited about putting this, this is going to be a talking point.
Is it going to be a talking point?
I'm sure so.
Because nerds are gay.
Some nerds are very not gay and are very threatened by gay
Well, that's
stuff.
true.
Yes.
But in my world...
Was this the fun element of...
No, I don't think so. And yet people have told me that it's the gayest Star Wars, and I frankly...
You're offended?
Into it. No.
I think that Star Wars is so gay already.
Okay.
I mean, have you seen the fits? We'd be like, look how gay this is, and then send each other a reference photo.
And are you telling me, with a straight face, that C-3PO is straight?
They're a couple. That's what I think. But this is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
Okay, that goes into the subject of what could be another video entirely, as Disney tries to use their movies, art, to influence life. But it's also a segue of sorts. We'll get back to the reaction footage shortly, but let's talk first about this idea that art influences life. You've heard that before, yeah? They say that art influences life, and this movie, The Bikeriders, is very much about that, but not in the way that Disney is trying to do it. It's not propaganda or agenda. It is honestly inspired by the photojournalism of Danny Lyons in his book called The Bikeriders. It captures the lives of members in the Chicago Outlaws motorcycle club during the 1960s, early 70s, like I said. Now, Lyons spent years writing with and photographing the club, providing an insider's perspective that lends the film a significant degree of realism. Now, this has influenced other biker films as well. If you've seen Beyond the Law, there's a photographer in that movie that's hanging around the Jackals MC in it. So that obviously was influenced by this. And honestly, Lyons was probably influenced by what Hunter S. Thompson did as a journalist hanging out with the Hells Angels. So, Lyons' book, and by extension, Nichols' movie of the same name, draw heavily from the real life experience and culture of the Outlaws, one of the most notorious motorcycle clubs in America. So, let's discuss the historic, real story and see how it compares to the film story that Nichols created. First and most obvious, he changed the name of the club. He didn't want to have any issues with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club because it still very much exists and operates strongly in the United States and other countries around the globe. So he changed the name of the club in the story. He also changed the name of some of the characters as well. And he changed the colors, the patch, but not by much. Take a look at this. This is the movie patch, and this is the real life patch. Now, we'll talk more about the name, the colors, and all of that sort of thing a bit later. But you can definitely see that it's derivative from the original. Now, that being said, as the merch starts coming out for this movie, be careful, because this is very, very close to the colors of an actual 1% club. Now, people wearing Sons of Anarchy merch got a bit of heat, but that would be nothing compared to this, potentially. Now, he changed the club name and the layout on the back of the jackets in order to try to avoid issues with the OLs. But that doesn't mean it'll protect you out on the highway. Skull, skull. Crossed pistons, crossed daggers. It's a lot closer than anything SOA merch ever was. So, back to the movie, The Bikeriders. Lyons' book gives homage to how the Outlaws were founded at Matilda's Bar on Old Route 66 in McCook, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, by setting the Vandals' home base in a bar as well. Now, originally called the McCook Outlaws Motorcycle Club in 1935, the club's activity was initially limited by World War II, as you might imagine. However, the first major rally took place in May of 1946 at Soldier Field in Chicago. Now, in the film, bikers gather at picnics where other clubs, other chapters from all over the country show up to bond with other motorcycle enthusiasts. This, I believe, was the film's effort at making an early rally for the movie. Now, as membership grew, the club moved from McCookville to Chicago and was then rebranded the Chicago Outlaws, adopting the skull logo as opposed to the previous winged motorcycle logo. Now, as someone who comes from the club background, I can say that Nichols gets a lot right. The film's attention to detail in how motorcycle clubs operate or how the members interact with one another and the types of people that are within clubs was spot on to my experience. The camaraderie among the members feels real, not forced. There's a genuine sense of loyalty and trust that resonates with anyone who's ever ridden with a club before. And it's demonstrated well in the movie as the president of the club burns down a bar where one of his members was attacked for his colors.
What about the bar? Burn it down.
Now, Tom Harding's portrayal of the club's leader is epic, as expected from him. His performance captures the complexities of being the leader while balancing the toughness with a sense of responsibility for his brothers. His character seems to draw inspiration from Marlon Brando in The Wild One, embodying a charismatic yet troubled leader whose presence commands respect and loyalty. Now, Hardy's character's evolution throughout the movie mirrors the struggles that many bikers face as the lines between right and wrong start to blur in the face of loyalty and survival. More on Marlon Brando, The Wild Ones, and Tom Hardy's character Johnny in a bit. Now, Austin Butler, on the other hand, he portrays a character that is reminiscent of James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. Butler's character is the young, ambitious writer who has infectious energy and a rebellious who cares spirit. His passion and determination to carve his own path within the club and throughout the world brings a dynamic intensity to the film. This portrayal adds depth to the narrative, reflecting the youthful defiance and a quest for identity that many of us, when first joining the life, experienced ourselves. Now's a good time to jump into the initial thoughts and reactions that we had after first seeing the film. But first, she wanted ice cream as we left. Now, coming from a club background myself, the movie was set way before I was in the club scene, right? I was in a club in the 90s. This was set in the 60s and in the early 70s. So obviously, big separation there. But it still made me feel nostalgic because a lot of the same brotherhood and a lot of the rules that they were talking about and all that stuff was the same. So that was interesting for me watching it. And there's just nothing like seeing a bunch of bikes together. I don't care if it's in person or on a screen. I enjoyed it. It's very interesting the way that they made it based on the book, and I don't know how much is real and how much is not real, it being based on the Outlaws. I don't know. It's based on that guy's experience with the Outlaws, not necessarily the Outlaws themselves. I don't know about Oh, yeah. In Chicago. Yeah. I don't know about the Outlaws, I don't know. He was taking pictures of and interviewing Outlaws, yes. But there was no... But because there was no story in the book that he did. So the guy that wrote it took the book. The book had photos and interviews, which the guy was doing in the movie. And so the guy that wrote the movie strung all of those together and tried to make a narrative out of it. So you can't say he also did not want to upset the Outlaws. So you can't say that it's a true story or anything like that. It's based on a book that was true. So I don't know about the Outlaws' history. I was not an OL. I have no idea what their history is. But it doesn't surprise me, the whole generational thing, because now that I've gotten older, I see generational stuff all the time. That kind of happens. But I think that it was good in that a lot of the original outlaw biker, not the club, but outlaw biker, a lot of that mentality, you kind of saw where it came from. And they did a really good job showcasing what those people are really like, were really like. I don't know anymore. but there's characters in that movie that I knew those people, not literally, but those characters, I thought it was really good from that aspect. Pretty well done. I enjoyed the sound of the bikes always. That's before we slapped all the emissions crap on motorcycles. What did you think? What was your impressions?
I also really enjoyed it. I think it's a really good time. I think it had some really great, well, not a lot, but it had some great riding, especially riding scenes, especially in the beginning. It had some really interesting, video cuts because they actually showed them changing gears and just, we've seen a lot of biker movies and up close of the mechanics of working the bike, especially with the footwork and everything. It was really cool to see that because you don't really see that too much.
Yeah. I expected, because he's the star of the film, I expected him to have a lot more speaking parts, but he didn't. There was most of the acting in this movie, except for from the girl, was physical and facial expressions. There was some dialogue, of course, but that was not...
Anything Tom Hardy said was amazing.
Oh, yeah, always.
Because always. And Jodi, she talked a lot. But that's her character.
She was the narrator, yeah.
But she just, almost verbal diarrhea in some ways was a character.
There was a lot of really nuanced stuff that was captured. For example, the street hoodlums in the one town that are stealing hubcaps, and then they hear the bikes coming, and they all stand up and they are gazing in wonderment at this, group of motorcycles go by. That's real. For a boy, that's real. And then all of a sudden they were like, nope, that's what we're doing. We're going to do like that.
Yeah. How did you feel about the comment that, these men are lawless. They don't want anybody telling them what to do. They don't want rules. They don't want to, conform to society. They don't want rules at all. So they join a motorcycle club and they make rules for everything.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's
funny.
Well, it's a definite paradox that is very much a part of club culture. You're anti-establishment. You don't want anybody to tell you what to do. But
you don't believe in the hierarchy of the man.
Yeah, but it's a very paramilitary organization. So there's hierarchy, there's respect, there's a process, there's rules. All that is very definitely there. Yeah, all that's very definitely there, which is interesting when you consider the fact that naturally outside of that, they don't want to have anything to do with rules. But that is an actual real paradox in real life. That's a real thing. And the fact that they captured that I thought was very interesting. Well, one of the things, probably coming from a club background, one of the best scenes in that movie was when the Benny character got beat up at the very beginning of the movie. And as soon as the word got back to the president, he went to go deal with it, and he brought everybody there. That's a real thing, too. Knowing that you have that many people behind you, whether you're right or wrong, is a wonderful feeling. Because even if you're wrong, they're going to back you, period. And you learn to respect that as opposed to taking advantage of it. But he taught everybody in that town, do not mess with my club, period. I will burn your shit down.
So in the movie, the Bikeriders, they had patches on that said 1%ers.
Mm-hmm. That has been around for a long time.
So in my mind, 1%ers are outlaw gangs, not outlaws, outlaw clubs that engage in criminal activity for money.
That's
where they get their money.
That is a modern day interpretation. And basically what this movie was trying to say is that that's what all the biker clubs turned into. Mm-hmm. That's what all the outlaw...
themselves a 1%er?
Now, to answer some of that, she's not wrong, but also not completely accurate. Now, terms have changed over time. They always do. And while outlaw and one percenter are treated virtually synonymous now, it wasn't always that way. The term outlaw has been around much, much longer. It came out of persecution at the hands of the American Motorcycle Association. Now, the American Motorcycle Association, or AMA, was an oversight group that was put together by motorcycle manufacturers to coordinate and equalize races between the manufacturers, because racing was really a promotional activity for them back then. It was how they promoted their motorcycles to the buying public, let them see them perform, right? So back in the 20s, the AMA was this overarching organization for motorcycle events, races, clubs as well, because clubs were started by the manufacturers as well. And anyone that wasn't allowed to be a member of the AMA, because they had rules, segregation and otherwise, were what they called outlaw racing clubs, meaning that they formed outside of the governance of the AMA. Now, the film showcased that particular aspect, the segregation aspect, by including a scene with a black motorcycle club at an outlaw event, one of those rallies, an outlaw rally for people outside of the AMA's blessed membership. Now, in the 1940s and the 1950s, the AMA was trying to grow the sport of motorcycle racing. And in order to make it more appealing to the conservative society of the 40s and 50s, they started to impose new and strict rules and regulations on participants in their sanctioned motorcycle racing events and in the participating clubs and racing teams, which discriminated against not only race, but also certain rebellious, free-spirited attitudes, long hair, vagabonds, that sort of thing. Now, a group of riders in California, specifically, felt constrained by these rules, as you would, which they believed stifled their freedom and creativity in racing and motorcycle customization and their ability to express themselves in any way they saw fit. So they started their own thing. That's the origin of the 13 patch that you've probably seen. It represented the first 13 racing teams or clubs that pulled away from the AMA. They began organizing their own racing events outside of the AMA's authority. They pursued a more rebellious, independent approach to motorcycling, often modifying their bikes for speed and style without having to adhere to these strict American Motorcycle Association sanctioned guidelines. And therefore, the AMA went after them. They were competition now, after all. And so the AMA used their connections in the police and in the government to try and get them shut down, saying things like they were doing events without having permits, things like that, citing things that they could harass them for. Now, this defiance of the AMA's control and their embrace of the more renegade ethos led to those riders being labeled as outlaws by the AMA and mainstream media of the time. Now, over time, the term outlaw began to become synonymous with any motorcycle clubs that operated outside of conventional society norms and legal boundaries. The racing events were outlawed by the AMA and the government. And so the racing teams, spectators, etc., all started to be referred to as outlaws. Now, these clubs often adopted a distinctive culture that emphasized loyalty and brotherhood and a love for motorcycles and the open road. Now, in the movie, you see that the origin of the club, the Vandals, came out of independent racing. This is an homage to the true history of outlaw clubs and how not all motorcycle clubs that were labeled as outlaw were actually involved in actual criminal activities. The term has persisted in popular culture to describe a subset of motorcycle clubs that rejected authority and upheld their own set of values and traditions. Now, across the country, these outlaws took control over that name and began referring to themselves with the moniker. For example, someone may say, I heard the Outlaws in Detroit are having an event, or the Michigan Outlaws are doing a flat track racing this weekend, that sort of thing. It simply identified people that were not within the AMA and the strict conservative regulations that they were enforcing on people. Now, let's get back to the movie as it relates to this history. The McCook Outlaws were first to put the term on a jacket. So they called themselves the McCook Outlaws because they were outlaws from McCook, right? But they were the first ones to put that term on their jacket. And with this, they took ownership of the name. Eventually, they moved from McCookville to Chicago and changed their winged patch to the skull. Then, the Hollister riot happened, followed by the Wild Ones movie. And because of that, they added the crossed pistons under the skull to match the Black Rebels Motorcycle Club in the Wild Ones movie. Now, they paid homage to this in the Bikeriders movie by Johnny deciding to make the club, period, because of what he saw in the Wild Ones on TV. Now, the patch, you see, it changed slightly for the movie. They used skull and crossed daggers instead of skull and crossed pistons. But they kept the Old English font. Now, you can also see another patch that has history in this movie. The Outlaws Club made another patch to specifically snub the AMA that was based on an actual AMA patch. Here's the two comparisons. This is the AMA's patch, AMA, and this is the Outlaw patch, AOA. American Outlaw Association. All a part of their rebellion against the tyranny of the AMA. The AMA was in control of all events. Anything outside was outlawed. Now, the one percenter term. After the Hollister riot, there was an article on the riot in Life magazine. And as a response to the public outcry from this article, the AMA is quoted as saying that 99% of all bikers were law-abiding citizens, and only 1% were the criminal riffraff, if you will. And just like what was done with the term outlaw, the criminal riffraff attached themselves to that 1% and made it a term to call themselves. And they were proud of it, proud to be that 1%. You can see that patch in the movie as well. Now, they changed the name of the club, they changed the patch, but not by much. Now, I'll stop. This is about the movie, not the Outlaws' history. So let's get back in focus to the movie. Now, one of the film's most compelling aspects is its portrayal of the club transformation over time. It starts out as a tight-knit group of riders who were racing together and share the love for the open road, a sense of freedom, and having their give-a-damn busted. However, as the narrative progresses, we start to see the gradual shift from motorcycle club to motorcycle gang. This transition is marked by increased involvement in criminal activities, escalating violence, and growing tension both within the club and with the outside society. Now, the film doesn't shy away from showing the consequences of this evolution, the loss of purity, the moral compromises, and the inevitable internal conflicts that arise as a club's original ideals are overshadowed by a darker, more dangerous reality. Now, I appreciate how it shows the difference between a motorcycle club and a motorcycle gang, as well as how the fame and power can lead a club into more of a gang-type lifestyle. Now, the film also touches on the Outlaws' rivalry with the Hells Angels. Kind of. The Hells Angels were a chief rival of the Outlaws operating out of Fontana, California, where they were founded in 1948. Now, the film hints at this rivalry through a character called Funny Sonny, who confronts Cal, revealing Cal's past affiliation with the HAs. Now, Kyle's real-life inspiration was more than likely Arthur Dion. Now, it's not factual in the film, but there is a nod to real-life Sonny. Sonny in the film conjures up thoughts of Sonny Barger from the Hells Angels. And the club Funny Sonny is with is called the Dead Devils MC. Not too far of a stretch to think of Hells Angels when you think of Dead Devils. And he crosses over and shirks his original mission in the film. None of that. That was all story. None of that was real. But it does kind of talk about the HAs, doesn't it? Now, Jodi Comer, the girl, also gives a standout performance, playing Butler's love interest in the movie. She adds a layer of emotional depth and showing the often overlooked sacrifices made by those who stand by club members. It also shows how she is seduced by the biker lifestyle. The cinematography also deserves a special mention. The film's visual style captures the raw beauty of the open road in the Midwest and the gritty reality of interactions within our world. The roaring engines, the thrill of the ride, and the ever-present danger are all portrayed with a visceral intensity that just kind of pulls you into the theme. The scenes are shot with a sense of realism that makes you feel like you're part of the pack, riding alongside in the movie. Now, Nichols also doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of the lifestyle either. The violence, the conflicts with normies, and the internal power struggles are depicted with unflinching honesty. These elements are crucial in painting a complete picture of what it means to live the life, the highs and the lows. However, what sets the Bikeriders apart is the underlying message about freedom and identity. It's a celebration of the rebellious spirit that defines us, but it's also a reminder of the personal cost of living life on the edge. Now, the film doesn't necessarily romanticize our world, but it respects it. I really see this whole film as a respectful love letter to club culture. Now, a bit of movie trivia. Some of the things we've already discussed can be considered trivia, but here's a few more nuggets. Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, and Norman Reedus are all actual riders with their own bikes in their personal lives. Jodi Comer spent hours going over the actual audio recordings of the interviews that Leon did with the real life Kathy in order to learn her personality and her accent. Jodi Comer and Tom Hardy are both English actors, as in from England. They're British. Now, everybody knows where they've seen Austin Butler from. He was in Elvis, and where Tom Hardy is from. He was in Venom. He was in Peaky Blinders. People know him. A lot of people don't know Jodi Comer, so I'll tell you. She was the female lead in Free Guy. And then another little nugget not directly related to the movie. The AMA, still to this day, denies writing a statement saying that 99% of bikers were law-abiding and that 1% were outlaws. In conclusion, the Bikeriders is a powerful, authentic depiction of motorcycle club life, particularly in that time frame. It's a film that respects our culture, our struggles, and our triumphs. For anyone within the scene, I think this is a must-watch, a film that speaks our truth with both reverence and honesty. For those outside, it offers a rare glimpse into the world that is often misunderstood, capturing the essence of what it means to be free and live free. So, go watch the film. Then let's talk about it. Put your thoughts in the comments below. Did you notice something that I didn't? Let me know. You can also join us on Thursdays at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time for Graybeard Biker Live, and we can discuss it there. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, hit the bell so that you know when new episodes are dropped. And if you enjoy motorcycle content, that's what the like button is for, to let YouTube know what type of content you like so that they know what type of content to serve you. Next for us, other than Graybeard Live, is going to be Thunder in the Smokies. That's right, we are going back to Maggie Valley. We went to it last year. That video is going to be right here. We have exciting things planned for our trip up there this go around. So be sure to check that you're subscribed so that you don't miss anything. And until next time, stay free, keep it shiny side up.